Hi everyone, I'm Edgar Ndjatou, Executive Director for Workplace Fairness based in Washington, D.C. And we're doing this recording to talk about some of the more recent uh, happenings in employment law that we've seen as the new White House has taken power in the past week or so. With me today is Kim Williams, who is the VP of People, Culture, and Compliance at Worker Advertising, to talk through some of the more recent executive orders that impact workers' rights and the rights that people have in the workplace and how employers need to respond moving forward, and also remind people of the rights they have, even with the rollbacks that we've seen. So Kim, I want to first focus on DEI. So as we all know, most people know, President Trump has released an executive order that rolled back DEI in the federal workforce, but also has made it difficult for uh, federal contractors to employ DEI initiatives, and has also made it clear that we'll have the Department of Justice and maybe other agencies enforce anti-DEI lawsuits against certain employers. So can you talk more about the executive order and the ripple effects that's already having throughout the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely seeing it spread beyond the federal workforce for sure. I mean, right now I'm with the private sector, and I'm even seeing where a lot of private sector employers are so worried about DEI that even if
Right.
they're not taking federal funding, they're kind of rolling back some of the protections or activities or initiatives that they already had in place. It's actually not necessary to do that. You know, the reach of government, can only extend right now to where folks are accepting federal dollars. And so a lot of folks in the private sector really aren't seeing that. And there's also a big effort, I think, to maybe try and rename it, but to still support it. There's just been too much evidence out there that shows that you have a younger generation of valuable employees and applicants that care about this stuff and are going to
Right.
ask you directly about this stuff. And if you want to be an employer of choice, it's really in your own self-interest to do this. But I also think, the anti-discrimination laws haven't gone away.
Hmm.
And so, your people can still file a claim against you for racism. They can still file a claim against you for sexism.
Right.
And so sometimes when we get rid of DEI, we're kind of getting rid of early warning systems where you were preventing these things from happening or making employees feel safe to come forward to come speak to you when a problem is small versus when it's large and it's a massive jury award. So, my point of view, and I hope, for a lot of others, particularly in the private sector, that they're still continuing to stay engaged in this space.
Yeah. So Kim, thank you for saying that. And just a couple of other things I would add is that certainly, particularly if you're an employer over 15 employees, that is usually the threshold that the federal discrimination laws would apply to you. And so I understandably you can understand if you're concerned about potential liability. But even if you're a small employer, I think it would be a good idea to reassess your policies to ensure that you're compliant with the executive order. Also, make sure that you're compliant with any relevant state laws because those still and are enforced and not impacted by this executive order. And making sure that you communicate with staff what your plans are when it comes to maintaining DI initiatives that are compliant with the current law and what's happening right now in general. Um, and, and, and to Kim's point, typically if you're trying to attract a certain type of worker, to reemphasize your commitment to maintaining a fair and equitable workplace. Kim, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, that, we're all well within our rights to do more to protect the employee.
Right.
And so, Edgar, as you know, both of us have helped support in workplace abuse. And so we actually encourage people to push through policies around bullying and things where there are no legal protections. So at any point, a good employer can decide like, hey, I just want to take good care of my people and I want to make sure
Yeah.
everyone has equal access to opportunity and advancement and that we build in fair structures, whatever you want to call that. You can always go above and beyond what's available and hold yourself accountable to your own policy.
Yeah, and Kim, you kind of alluded to this earlier when you talked about big for workers that there's still things in place that might protect them, but understandably, as you can imagine, there are probably a lot of workers right now that are a little fearful of what's happening with DEI. Do you have anything else to say to those workers around what to expect, or things they can do to ensure that they know what their protections are in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, now more than ever, it's just so important to stay informed and to look at sites like Workplace Fairness that, are reputable, that are neutral, that, are putting out information that is actually by attorneys that have a deep understanding of this. There's so much disinformation out there, but a lot of the things that have been pushed out through these executive orders are already being challenged. I think, a lot of things are going to shift dramatically, and I think we're going to start to see, we already are starting to see challenges in the courts that are instituting protections that were kind of always there, and making sure that that enforcement is there to kind of protect them. So I think, keeping yourself informed as much as you can and documenting everything that is happening. And so that, if you are at a point where you do need to pursue a discrimination claim, that you have all the records, you've collected all the evidence, so that you're making it easier for yourself to present a case to an attorney so that they know whether they can pick you up or not, but also just being prepared to be shut out at any time, so that, if you need to take pictures of things with your phone, being mindful that you're not, taking sensitive information or doing something that might get you in jeopardy somewhere else. But go ahead and start protecting yourself, and keeping those records and keeping a log at a bare minimum is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to switch gears a little bit to what's happening at the EEOC. So as some people know, the EEOC does not have a quorum at the moment at the commissioner's level. It doesn't impact field operations, but one thing that's important to note at the commissioner level is that President Trump has essentially ended the terms of two of the commissioners before the terms are up. Now, the acting chief commissioner has laid out a directive that the EEOC would no longer prioritize protecting gender identity discrimination in the workplace. So that would include people who are transgender or transitioning or identify by a certain gender, and that is also having ripple effects through the workforce. Now, one thing I would say is that many legal authorities have made it clear that there are still protections and for workers who are claiming any gender identity discrimination. It is protected by recent Supreme Court decision, and also with the current EEOC legal framework. So there is still those protections, but obviously it does have a chilling effect. So can you want to talk more about that, that chilling effect that I think we're all seeing right now?
No, absolutely. And I think we've kind of historically seen these pendulum swings. When there's major shifts in the federal government, then you kind of see counter movements that can hit across the states. And I point that out in part because, like, when we think of federal workers, sometimes we're just thinking about DC, but these are millions of people that are actually all over the country. And so I do like to encourage people to also remember that, a lot of states have this kind of, they have agencies. Like California has its own version of, the EEOC that may be able to help people.
Right.
So I think, never just assume that things have been completely cut off from there. And with all my love and respect for the EEOC, they've never been adequately funded. They were always slow. So there were always some forms of challenges there that I think a lot of attorneys in the labor and employment world seem to know and understand, so that they don't bank entirely on that. There still may be mechanisms within each organization, each agency, each company that allow for you to pursue investigations. There may be other paths where, there may not be specific language that is helping you, but in my world, coming from the HR side, a bully is a bully is a bully, and if they're hitting you on one thing, they're probably getting you on another. And so if someone's not respecting your rights as a human being, there's still some vulnerability and some exposure for, a bad actor in a workplace who's doing that. So I think number one message is don't give up hope on that. There are a
Yeah.
lot of attorneys out there who are more eager than ever to try and help people navigate these difficult terrains, and so many brilliant people like Edgar who are always available and big-hearted and willing to talk to people for free. So yeah, there are more resources out there, I think, than we know.
Yeah, no, that's very clear. And one thing I also want to emphasize that it's a lot has happened very quickly, and it's still a very much a changing landscape. And so Workplace Fairness is working to keep on top of it and update its paid rights content as quickly as possible to keep up with all the changes. And as Kim mentioned, there are lawsuits out there challenging many of these executive orders, and so that might impact things as well. So stay tuned as we keep track of everything. But the other thing I would just say is that stay informed. Read the news. Don't put a blanket over your head. Read the news. Stay informed, and just make sure that if diversity and inclusion that they're important to you, if gender equality is important to you, then make sure that in your workplaces you still promote those things. Because again, those rights are still protected under federal and many state laws at the moment. Kim, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and for your positive, encouraging vibe. We need that now more than ever. So grateful for you.
Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us, and thank you, everyone, for watching this video.